Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Austin Clark here, host of the Multiply You podcast. So excited for our guest today, Scarlett Nolen. She's the president of Truly Nolen. If you're in the pest space, you've heard of them. I think that at one point too, I thought that I read a lot of things, but on the company, but I think Truly Nolen was recognized for a lot of things, but also the most recognizable or best branded company. And I don't even think that it was like nation. I think that it was like globally because it's so recognizable. And so really glad to be able to have you on today, Scarlett. We'll jump in here in just a moment. This episode is brought to you like they all are from Moxie Pest Control. We are growing like a lot of firms are. We're trying to do the best that we can by customers, like all firms are, treating them well. We grow all the same ways that you do. Whether it's SEO or PPC or direct mailers or whatever you have it. Specifically in Arizona, we've had the opportunity to be able to grow via acquisition. And so if anyone is in the space that is either looking to exit or is interested in doing that, we'd love to be able to learn about that. We've had a lot of really great instances just in the last 12 to 24 months where those have gone well and good and smooth. And they can either reach out to me directly on my cell at 480-254-9730, or they can email me at aclark@moxiepestcontrol.com. Scarlett Nolen, she's here with us today, and it's wonderful to have you. She has a wonderful bio, and I'm so excited just even the last 10, 15 minutes that we spent kind of getting acquainted and learning about your path. So Scarlett Nolen was promoted to president of Truly Nolen of America in March of 2019. Nolen has worked for the company since 2012 in multiple roles. Most recently, Nolen was the district manager of the Growth District. I want to know more about that. A district of new service offices throughout Florida, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Prior to joining the company, Nolen graduated summa cum laude from the University of South Carolina with a bachelor's degree in experimental psychology and summa cum laude from the University of Central Florida with a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. Scarlett, thank you for being here. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I love connecting with other leaders in the pest control space and the home services space. So this is great. I think it's kind of the all ships rise with high tide. So the more we can collaborate and share, I think it's just a wonderful thing for the industry.
Well, and I have to share something that was so meaningful to me and my executive team in here in Arizona. I think that it was probably about 2 years ago. And I think that I emailed you about it, but we were growing, struggling, having issues with different things, specifically in our Phoenix and our Arizona market. And we just said, hey, I mean, who is just the best in the world, right, at what they do? And Truly Nolen has a humongous presence everywhere, but I think probably specifically because it's one of your headquarters in Arizona. And so I don't even know how, but somehow we reached out and we just said, hey, we've got all of these problems and we know that you can probably solve them for us. And we connected with Mark Ringsletter out of Tucson and just kind of shared some of those things. And I was just so impressed because they said, hey, come on down. I mean, they didn't literally roll the red carpet out, but it felt like that. And I mean, gave us bags and swag and the book that was written by your father, and spent 6 to 8 hours. I mean, they patched in executives from Florida to tell us about some of the things that they were excited about, struggling with. And I mean, to have people drop in that entire day to say hello and answer questions, I just thought this is amazing. And so thank you again publicly for that. And it's been incredible. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. I like, the pest control issues tend to be universal. If small or big, they're, we're all kind of going up against the same thing. So it's nice to be able to share and have that camaraderie in the industry.
Yep. The problem's already been solved. Someone's already done it. Go learn from them.
Exactly.
Scarlett, if you don't mind, I mean, let's start with a little bit of your path. I mean, it's kind of an interesting, so with your formal education in experimental psychology and then again in marriage and family therapy, I mean, how does someone, so now you run one of the largest pest control companies in the nation. What's been a little bit of your path? How did that happen to you?
Yeah. How did that happen? How do you go from training to be a therapist to running a pest control company? So, I grew up never thinking in a million years that I would be what I'm doing today. And, maybe I'd pick up like a different major or something, but, I was a therapist for a little bit. I loved it, very rewarding. And, I kind of made this just decision to engage with really my father's company to learn about it, and kind of going with it the mindset of what can I learn? Not really thinking a whole lot about my end goal or anything like that, but just sort of being a student of the business. And while he was live, I wanted to take advantage of that, and such an opportunity for me personally to do that. And then I think the same thing that probably happens to everybody, they catch the bug.
Because pest control no one ever goes looking for pest control. It always
right, it like finds you, even if your father's Truly Nolan. It's like, just so I kind of caught the bug and kind of got addicted to it. And just it was sort of like one day at a time. I ran routes and visited customers, and I did the things that we kind of all do when we join the industry, I think. And I just sort of showed up every day to be a student of the business. And it kind of just evolved from there, going service management and branch manager and district manager. I mentioned in my bio, and that district manager I loved that role. That was a really, really fun time. Kind of my focus when I was a district manager was really focusing on expansion and growth. So we opened up 7 locations during my time as district manager, and I kind of helped open those up and coordinated some of that, and then oversaw it. And kind of the thought process of opening a new location, the mentality of that is sometimes a little different than a more established location. And
absolutely. There's just totally different challenges, right? To go into a base of customers and employees and protocols and systems, and starting from scratch. Even if you do have a great brand or marketing or whatever, there's unique challenges. We
went in territories that no one's ever heard or seen of a mouse scar, and maybe some listeners have not heard or seen a mouse scar. But so, the territories we went in, we had 0 brand recognition. So it really was starting a business from scratch with quite a bit of support, but loads of support, Truly Nolan support. But we, one door at a time, door knocked at a time, one customer at a time, kind of thing, built some branches. And whether you're acquiring or doing some organic, it's just do it one customer at a time, I suppose.
And so, Scarlett, you said you were kind of drawn to it. You kind of shared some of the things that you were doing. Like, what specifically was that? Was it, was it the people interaction? Did you fall in love with like the biology and technical aspect of it? Was it operations? Or
what has drawn me in, or when I caught the bug, is really the people. I think if anybody goes to, like, whether it's conferences or we do continuing education, like outside, pest control people were sort of like, we're a league of our own. There's just something about pest control people I don't know I can't put my thumb on it, but I enjoyed understanding the teamwork and the systems. And I think Truly Nolan, Moxie, anywhere you go, you have clusters and teamwork and that culture aspect. So the culture piece of it was kind of what drove me in. I mean, termites are fascinating, and we can geek out and nerd about that stuff. But for me, what got me so hooked was really just the people.
Yeah, they're really incredible. We had an attorney years ago that helped us with some things, and he would always say, Austin, the pest space is filled with just hardworking men and women. They're up early, they're out late, they're working on the weekends, they're doing jobs that no one else wants to do. It is just filled with good people.
Yeah.
And I found that to be true. I mean, everywhere that you go. So your degrees might not and actually, I'm kind of disagreeing with myself as I say it. I actually think that your degrees have everything to do with being the president of a company. I don't know that there's degrees that could have prepared you more for what you're doing right now.
Right. Yeah, I know I kind of kid but while everybody else is getting the MBA or whatever, I think a psychology degree, and I'm not really here to advocate for people getting psychology degree, but if I were, I would definitely say that is, or any kind of degree, but I love my degree. I think it's one of the best. If someone's looking for leadership, people is really what it's all about. And just the psychology of kind of how people work and what makes people tick and so forth. We're in the people business. So, yes. And we're dealing with people, whether it's our customers or employees or, working with them through their fears of bugs or fears of anything else. And so that's the psychological thing, leadership or bugs, and everything in between. So it's a great, I think it's useful every day.
So what was the original plan? Were you looking to be a psychologist? Were you looking to be a marriage and family psychologist or therapist? Was that the plan?
Yeah. So I worked with like groups and worked individually with people. I worked in groups and the group dynamics. So like in a group therapy, what we might see on TV or something. There's a lot of dynamics that happen in a group therapy situation that are pretty much the same thing in an executive team or a leadership team. And the dynamics that happen in a family are pretty much the same thing that also happen in a branch or or an executive team or whatever have. So those group dynamics, family, group, they're pretty interchangeable. So they all happen and kind of, I kind of look at it as when I'm working with groups or individuals, I kind of hone in on what makes what's innate to that person. What is the strength that they bring that nobody else brings? They can suck at anything else, but let me hone in on what they're really, really, really good at. And let's exploit that. Let's capitalize on it. But, those are kind of negative words, but honing in on those strengths and letting people kind of thrive in their strengths is interesting to me. And that kind of goes back to my degree a bit, building on people's strengths. That's kind of where everything is.
Well, and I, especially in the current climate, we were talking a little bit before the show went live just about some of, whether it's with the pandemic and some of the pandemic hangover that you called it, which I really, really liked. But yeah, you consider a company or you consider a family and just human beings and their psychological state and their well-being. I mean, they might have issues with managing money or budgets or issues at home or I mean, you name it. How Scarlett, have you seen, how has your formal education been helpful to you in the last year plus since some of this stuff has been going on with the pandemic? I mean, I think that it's made everything probably more acute and more in your face. And so, I mean, how have you worked through some of that and how has some of your education helped you to do so?
I think that we're all going through the pandemic as human beings. We all went through the last year as human beings. So the stress and the fears that we've all been reveling in and our stress levels, whether we're conscious of them or not, have been at an all-time high. So kind of just remembering people are people, whether, pest control, we were really lucky to be an essential service. So
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That was the godsend, but so many people also lost their jobs or whatever it have be. So the stress at home in all factors have been boiling for the past year. So kind of just recognizing that it doesn't matter, technician, salesperson, manager, we're all human beings and we're kind of been in this state of stress. And now, I like to use the term pandemic hangover because we've been like holding our breaths in this pandemic. And now we're like starting to release that bottle cap, a bit of stress. And now it's like, okay, what's left over? What's left over from being under this tremendous amount of pressure for a full year? And people are, I think, breathing for the first time.
What are they doing, Scarlett? Because it's employees, right? Mm-hmm. It is customers. You know what I mean? I can't echo enough of what you said. Thank goodness we were an essential service, but we both have friends or acquaintances or perhaps even family members that work in the restaurant business or in the entertainment business as it relates to cruising or travel or whatever else. And they weren't so fortunate,
Right. Yeah, our social networks got changed. And that all, kind of comes back to stress and just the stress that people are living. So even if you're in an essential service, you were far from immune from the stressors that came from the pandemic, from your workspace. And we're kind of feeling it all. And I think it's important that going back to like the strengths when we're clouded and all this stress, kind of going back to, okay, well, what are our strengths? What are we going to build on? Let's get back to the basics of what we can build on. And we're seeing this pandemic hangover in lots of ways. We were talking before we started airing that, people haven't taken vacations for a year. So now everybody's taking vacation, everybody wants to anyway. I certainly do. And people haven't had gatherings for a full year. So now everybody's having that backyard, whatever, barbecue or whatever that gathering is. People haven't been going to restaurants as much for a full year. So now the restaurants are completely flooded with people. And then if you haven't gone to a restaurant, getting in is a challenge. If you haven't gone, they're way understaffed and the impact of that is huge. So we've been in this deficit of so many things, whether it's health security, feeling just secure in our health, a deficit of, financial unknown, a deficit of social interaction, a deficit of global security. What's going to happen? A deficit of what's going to happen, not even globally, but in my immediate family or friend network to them. And now we are kind of like getting our sea legs back a little bit, finding our way. And so you've had this deficit of all these things that have been normal to us. And now we're finding there's like a surplus or a rush to find that normalcy or fill that giant void that's kind of happened for the year.
In your experience, is that a healthy thing? Is that a good thing? Do people need to kind of go and get some of that? I mean, obviously, if you own a pest control company, you want people to travel and be good mentally, but you're like, could you do that in the fall when the busy season's over?
Right. I think it's a human thing. I don't know if it's good or bad. I think it's totally normal to feel like you're trying to find some sort of balance. If you're like me, you sat a lot on your, you may have not like exercised as much. So, people are like running a whole bunch or whatever it is. From a business standpoint of view, we are busy. And I know everyone's feeling that the summer, it's the season. So of course, as a business, it's like, can we just hold off on taking that 2-week vacation? Because we got a lot of customers to serve. And we're lean. Everybody's looking for more employees right now, whether you're in the pest control business or I think most people are very much aware of like the restaurant deficit and the restaurants are desperate to hire people. But, I know it true to be in Truly Nolen. I'm sure, you guys are feeling it too. It doesn't matter what pest control company you talk to. They are lean on staff right now. There is not a pest control provider right now that is not lean. So if you're sitting in your branch and you're thinking, man, we need to hire more people, everybody is feeling that in every market, in every state. And it's not a your company thing. It's not even just an industry thing. It's a macroeconomic kind of struggle that we're feeling certainly right now.
Yeah, no, it's really, really interesting. We talk regularly about, this same time last year, I think kind of what happened is the pandemic was going on just over a year ago. I think there was a lot of fear associated with that. And so people kind of hunkered down. What's going to happen in terms of employment? Am I going to have a job? Am I not? And so I think people stayed put. And then with some of the assistance, which I know has been very, very helpful, it is, now employers are, hey, we've got more work than ever, depending on the industry. A lot of them do. And so now we need help. We need workers to be able to serve clients and service them and take good care of them. I would think that we probably, at least locally here, whatever our budget was for hiring or recruiting last year, I think we've tripled it at least. And
people are putting a lot of money right now into recruiting, and whether it's those sign-on bonuses or anything like that, kind of going off to the deficit to the surplus, that stress on a company for being desperate to hire people. So whether you're a small company or a big company, there's that desperation to hire people. So sometimes your standards get a little lower, sometimes your rates get a little higher, and we're going to pay for that in the long run. I mean, short term, you might fill the seat with a warm body, but we're going to pay for that as an industry. Individual companies will pay for the long-term impacts of that, not hiring quite the right fits, so a little bit higher of turnover. And I think there's a lot of people out there, that are kind of maybe reflecting or kind of asking themselves, well, should I work? Do I want to work from home? What is my work status? Kind of the stigmas around collecting unemployment are a little different in this climate right now. I think it's, maybe a year or two ago, people said, I'm not collecting unemployment. I'm a worker. I'm a worker bee, especially pest control people. We love to get up early and work our hearts out. We're worker bees for sure. And kind of I'm not working right now. Before it was like, oh yeah, you might have had a friend or two that was looking for a job or not working, but now it's a little more pervasive. And so it's a little more normalized to not be going to work every day. And so as employers, that puts us in a hard spot because we're desperate to hire.
It's like, we need you so badly. Please, please, please. We need you. And,
right. And employees, I think, are kind of reflecting on their options or what they want. They're kind of looking to the left, looking to the right. Well, what are my options? And, I encourage companies and we're trying to stay focused with this at Truly Nolen because we are eager for employees just like everybody else is, to be mindful of lowering your standards of hire. Really be mindful of that. It's not going to work out in the long run. I think we all know this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We all know this consciously as leaders, but it's like we have to fight against our desperation for hiring people and our conscious experience.
Well, and I think the greatest tragedy at the end of the day is the person, the company may pay for it. The employee may pay for it one way or another somehow. But at the end of the day, it really is the end consumer of that good or service that not only literally pays for it with their pocketbook, whether it's in raised prices or prices that are adjusted to be able to operate a business,
right?
Or whether it's paying for it with service that might not be up to snuff or up to par, or a good that's not delivered on time or whatever. And so I think that we both agree that, hopefully in the next year or so, things will kind of normalize and people will be getting back out there and back to work, because what's happening just doesn't seem to be sustainable for too much longer.
It's not. These kind of hiring trends are not sustainable because the water is chummed and the sharks are feeding, and it's just not sustainable. Like, companies can't financially afford to hire people at exceptional rates for long periods of time. It just doesn't financially work itself out without something giving. So passing that cost on, that additional hiring cost, passing that on to customers, customers are going to feel that. And so you might have customer turnover. And so, the decisions that we make right now as leaders will have ripple effects. And for the next year or so, I think everyone's kind of finding what will be their norm.
I think you're right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Transitioning a little bit. So what is it like to be Scarlett Nolan? I mean, what do you do? I mean, what does a day in the life of you look like? How do you spend your professional time?
Yeah, I put my pants on 2 legs at a time. And I get asked this a lot. I don't know that my job has really changed a whole bunch in the 8 years. My title has certainly, but I kind of come every day to be a student. I learned that lesson from my father. My father would read. I don't do this. I don't have the skill or whatever you want to call it. He would read like 3 textbooks a week. He was a
Wow.
pervasive, and these weren't like your casual fun readers. These were some hardy novels.
Finance, accounting,
Yeah. Oh,
autobiographies. Yeah.
yes. And but he came every day to work as a student. He just was there to really learn. He would spend a lot of time on the business, not in the business, and just learning and strategizing. And so that certainly has inspired me. And the way I learn is not through powering through 3 textbooks a week, because I just don't have that. But I spend a lot of time, whether it's reading blogs or articles or talking with people like you. I like to pull things from different industries and say, okay, what about this? What about this? In unlikely industries, yeah, I'll use my experiences in going to a restaurant. It's like, oh, the restaurant did this. How could we apply that
Sure.
in the pest control world, in the customer service world? What does that look like? So there's not a day that goes by that I don't probably easily spend an hour reading something or talking to somebody to learn something more. So this morning, before we got on the call, I was Googling. What was I Googling? I was Googling like some leadership concepts that I don't know if I'll use or not. But I kind of try to learn, absorb, and then pick and choose, excuse me, how we might want to apply it. So whether that's kind of reading an article, an industry article, or just a business article, spend a lot of time in that space.
What would you say, Scarlett? So, I mean, obviously, your dad has been influential to you, and just as example of reading I mean, that would be a great goal for anybody to get
Right.
to. What would you say something that was meaningful or was passed on to you from your dad? There's the reading. Anything else that was really, really significant for what you're doing now?
He was such a humanitarian. And I know I'm biased, but I will also say he did get a humanitarian award. So maybe maybe other people thought that too. And he was a human. He did take quite a few psychology courses, which I didn't know until I was in college, and he let me know that. But he enjoyed getting to know people and understanding people's stories, and he was such a fighter for underdogs. And I think partially that, and speculating, partially he was a survivor of polio. So I think that really influenced who he was as a human being, and understanding kind of that underdog mentality of kind of fighting his way. And so that's been a big influence on me. And man, my dad was fearless and stubborn. And we would joke about this all the time. He'd call me stubborn, and I'd say, no, I'm persistent. And he'd say, no, I'm persistent. You're stubborn.
Yeah.
So we would go back on that. But so I think there's some overlying traits that are there between the two of us that I hope to have. He certainly was my hero, idol.
No, that's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. That's great. So you've been the president of Truly Nolen for a little over 2 years.
Yes.
Some days it probably feels like that happened yesterday. Some days it probably feels like that's all you've ever done for the last 100 years. I have a couple of questions here, but what have you learned? I mean, what are some of your big takeaways in the last 2 years? And what have some of those things been?
Well, definitely start your tenure as president through a pandemic.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, you're president, boom,
Yeah.
pandemic. So that was
Yeah.
it. But in all seriousness, I think the greatest strength, if you will, that I've been able to hopefully capitalize on is um, perspective. So I think this very similar in a lot of companies that I'm aware of. But there is a lot of tenure in leadership teams in pest control. We're not an industry that you just kind of casually join at the top. All my executives were either technicians, salespeople. One of them joined as a branch manager. And worked their way up. So there's a lot of 20 and 30-year executives on my team. And the perspectives that they all have are so, so important. Their tenure. However, and this is a big however, that it can't be ignored that the perspectives that are people that are outside of that room, that executive team, are equally as important. A lot of
And was that what you're kind of looking at? That was that was that a difficult thing to, as far as the tenure goes? Was that a difficult thing to like come in? So you never ask a woman their age, and I won't do that today. But I do know that you're not 65, and
not
so
65.
what was that a challenge? You know what I mean, to come into?
I look at it as I could have looked at it as a challenge. I really looked at it as an opportunity. Being the millennial on my executive team, having that millennial perspective, and being that millennials are the largest growing, they're the force that's coming. And by 2025, we are employing 80-90% millennials. And so having that millennial perspective, I think, was an opportunity. And maybe intimidating to join an executive team full of 30 years of tenure for someone like me. But I really looked at it as, you know what, my lack of experience actually makes me, I don't have the biases of time that are created.
I love that.
That fresh perspective, that millennial perspective, is really something that the executive team, I think, was missing, that I was able to provide or inject and kind of I got a lot of feedback of, I got a little new refresh, or feels like a little restart, a little reboost. And I would encourage anybody, whether it's an executive team or a small company and it's just your team, to think about how do you add diversity in your mix to expand perspectives, and whether that diversity is in gender. Obviously, we're a very male-dominated industry, so I check a few boxes, not only in my age, but as my gender as well. As far as alternate perspectives, we know through research that a lot of females in the household are making a lot of those pest control purchasing decisions and a lot of household purchase decisions. So having a female in the mix is probably a good idea from a business strategy, home services standpoint of view.
Absolutely.
It just sort of makes sense. And, and also in race, we've had a really eye-opening year with the Black Lives Matter movement, and just a little bit, this entire past year, I think there's been a magnified focus around gender and race in the last few years. And there's a lot of opportunity there. I know, sometimes it might be someone's instinct to shy away from like exploring that, but I think there's just so much opportunity in exploring the diversity and what new perspectives can bring. There was actually, fun little facts, there was a study done on diverse teams making more money. So regardless of your personal perspectives or anything like that, diverse teams make more money. It's just good business sense.
It makes good business sense. Well, what I'm so glad, Scarlett, that you shared that, because you consider the climate and the pandemic, and it's like, man, if we could just be a little bit kinder, have a little bit more patience, maybe sit for a second and say, hey, well, maybe, Scarlett, I don't agree with you on this point, I do agree that we're both humans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's just so much knowledge and perspective that you can glean because everyone, right? Everyone brings their perspective. People have different educational backgrounds. They were raised in different places, sometimes a lot of the times different countries, right? I really love what you said about gender. And hey, the data does show us that often the females are making these kinds of decisions. And so, do you think that we should think a little bit more that way?
Right.
And no, that's incredible. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's one thing, and we can move on to the next topic for the sake of time. But the other day, I kind of took let me take it one step further. I think of myself as pretty young. However, I pulled my COO's son in, and he's going to be going off to college soon. But, in 10 years, he's going to be our customer. And so I just jogged his brain. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And kind of pull one more little perspective. And things like a neighbor referral were insane to him. Like he immediately was pretty like, why would you ever ask your neighbor for like a home services referral? And I'm like, well, pest control's kind of been built on that for the past 80 years.
1,000 years. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's just the reality of it. He's like, no, I just don't Google. What are you talking about? I would ask a neighbor. That's insane. He's like, I probably wouldn't even ask a friend, He goes, I would just Google it. So just
unbelievable.
Gaining that perspective, and he's 17 years old, not had a job. He doesn't have any experience, but he does have his insight and his perspective, which we can't underestimate. So.
Yeah, it's incredible. What would you say during that two plus year period? I mean, what's been the most either difficult thing or challenging thing that you've either gone through or been dealt? Perhaps the pandemic, but what's been a hard thing that you've had to face and address?
I mean, kind of all the obvious pandemic things. A year ago in April, I'm like, I think we were all sort of like, holy crap, what's going to happen? But outside of pandemic related stuff, there's no guidebook. So it's kind of like being a parent, and it's rewarding and exciting and all these great things like being a parent, but there is no guidebook to running a business. There is no right or wrong, just like being a parent. There's probably some better stuff you can do. There's some decent stuff you can do. Maybe, not neglect your child, but there's no guidebook. So, especially through a pandemic,
figure it out.
Yeah, everybody was just figuring it out. So, as challenging, that's fun and challenging. I think you could look at it as an adventure, or you could look at it as an ordeal. If you choose adventure, you're probably going to land quicker on your feet. And so just not having a guidebook is tough.
And figuring it out. Yeah.
Figuring it out. Yeah. So
Scarlett, as we kind of begin to round this thing out, we kind of talked previously about like change and change fatigue. And if an organization or a person wasn't changing before the pandemic, they certainly changed and adjusted during it, whether it was at home learning or with your kids or working from home or a variety of different things. What could you speak to that a little bit? You guys are constantly changing, constantly evolving. I know one of your big initiatives right now is kind of going more cloud-based or paperless. How do you manage people through that without having them just be so tired of showing up every day? And it's like, oh my gosh, Scarlett is, changing this. Yeah, exactly. How do you?
We're navigating that right now. It's really tough because to your point, there's so many layers of changing that are being forced upon us in this climate. We all know change is inevitable, and companies have to change and evolve. And so there's the business things that you want to change and evolve. Like, we're redoing our routing and we're really going paperless. We're committed to going paperless. So some of those things that are natural business evolutions have this magnified stress of change because we've had a year of unanticipated, forced change. So change fatigue is a kind of a psychological experience as humans. I don't care who you are, you feel it. The extreme and rapid, the quantity and quality of change are both extremely high right now. Everybody has to change right now. If you didn't change in your business, then you aren't in business. So you pivoted in some way, and the world changed. So there is that level of change fatigue and burnout, particularly. And so trying to be mindful that, humans are humans, people are people, and having just a little bit more flexibility in that than we maybe normally would, I think is important. I think we, as kind of, as leaders, need to be mindful of that with people and give some people some grace that maybe we wouldn't have been as rigid a couple of years ago. Sure. But realizing that people are feeling that change fatigue and talking about it too, because people will feel like they're isolated and burn out by themselves, but saying, we're kind of all feeling a little change fatigue. Sorry to my team, my team here, sorry that we are doing more change on top of the change. But going back to, we're not changing who we are. We're family owned. We've got the family values. And, I know that your company, you guys are doing some change stuff and acquiring. Anytime you acquire, that there's some change that goes along with that. But the heart of who we are hasn't changed, and kind of honing in on the strengths that aren't changing is sometimes a nice little reminder.
It's like, hey, the foundation's still the same. The principles are still the same. We might do things technically a little bit differently. And I love too that you said, Scarlett, like, it's addressing it. Don't hide it. Don't keep it a secret. Don't let people just kind of find out about it. Put it out there. Give them time. Have a little bit of a grace period, and let people know that, hey, we are feeling it. I'm feeling it. You're feeling it, and we're going to make it through. It's going to be just fine.
Having a little sense of humor about it doesn't always hurt either. So.
Yeah. Well, finally, Scarlett, what words of advice or wisdom would you have to anyone that might be listening as it relates to, just anything, running their business, working with employees, navigating difficult issues from your perspective?
Focusing on your strengths is kind of my hallmark chant. But through all this stress and change and season and heat, all this heat, try to remember to laugh and have fun. And that remembering to laugh and have fun will be contagious in your group, even if you have to fake it a little bit to make it. Having some fun along the way, it's easy. It's really, really easy to forget to have fun at work. And so I would encourage people, it might sound really cheesy, but there's a universal truth to having some fun at work that'll bring people together and enjoy kind of the journey of this life or pandemic or this adventure. Make it an adventure and not necessarily make it an ordeal, and we'll all come out a little better.
Well, and I don't think, Scarlett, that advice or counsel could be any more relevant than it is today, in having some fun, relaxing a little bit, and just knowing that we're gonna make it through. Scarlett, thank you so much for being on. Incredible guest. Everyone that's tuned in, thank you so much for listening. We'll drop these once a week. Please subscribe and please tune in. And everyone, create a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.